What is up, guys? Hello and welcome to another video. Today we're looking at the top 10 most expensive cards in the Tempest expansion of Magic the Gathering, released in October of 1997. One interesting fact about Tempest is that, similar to many other base sets at the time, it has exactly 110 commons, 110 uncommons, and 110 rares, and then 20 basic lands as well. So anyway, dig up your old treasure chests full of Magic the Gathering cards that are over 20 years old, and look for the ones with the stormy cloud symbol on the sort of middle side area of the cards. At number 10 on this list is Reanimate. So it's a 1 black mana sorcery, and it reads, put target creature card from any graveyard into play under your control and lose life equal to that creature's casting cost. So first of all, any graveyard. That's good because, of course, if your opponent has a creature you want to reanimate, you can use that as well. If you're playing a big multiplayer game, then you might have a wide variety of options of creatures that you can bring back. Secondly, although it says lose life equal to that creature's total casting cost, that is a very worthy cost to pay. It doesn't usually end up mattering that much. Compare and contrast to a lot of the other reanimate spells, and good reanimate spells, which are 2 mana, meaning that you're losing tempo potentially and valuable resources, which is what makes reanimate so good. It is even feasible with some mana acceleration, such as a Lotus Petal or Mox Diamond, to get a turn 1 Entomb to put any single card from your library into your graveyard, and then reanimate that card on turn 1, getting some nasty, 10/10 indestructible that exiles the top 20 cards of the opponent's library when it attacks, or really any giant fatty of your choice, which can be pretty devastating. And losing 10 life in this circumstance doesn't really matter if you have a giant, super huge creature on turn 1. That being said, Reanimate is an uncommon. It's not a rare. By the way, for those unfamiliar, these older sets don't have the color-coded set symbols, so you do just have to look online and see what the rarity is. Reanimate happens to be an uncommon. One other thing, too, that I was thinking about Reanimate is that it doesn't work that well with Griselbrand, because generally speaking, when you reanimate Griselbrand, you want to use its ability as many times as possible right away, and if you're losing 8 life off the get-go, then you're just missing 1 activation of drawing 7 cards, so that's one sort of downside I wanted to highlight. But despite having 4 reprints, and that's not including promos and special versions of the card, in which case there would be even more, this is still a $15 uncommon, which is pretty sweet. That's pretty expensive for an uncommon in my books. One other thing to note is all the prices in this video are in US dollars, and also for cards in near mint condition, and of course are approximate prices only. At number 9 on the list is Eladamri, Lord of Leaves. So this is a reserve list rare, meaning that Wizards of the Coast promises never to reprint this card again in functionally identical form. And all cards with the little star next to the number here are on the reserve list. So for 2 green mana, you can summon a legend that is a 2/2, and I'm just going to skip right onto the Oracle text because this card's been changed pretty heavily since it was printed. So instead of it being a legend creature type, it's now a legendary creature Elf Warrior, which in my opinion is an advantage. It reads, other elf creatures have Forest Walk, and other elves have Shroud. So what this means is not just your elves, but all other elves. And although that is usually a disadvantage with the Forest Walk thing, because if you're playing green, you're probably running forests, but it's not completely a disadvantage with the Shroud thing, because if your opponent's elves get Shroud, they might not have built their deck the same as you. They might have a lot of spells and equipment and whatnot that they want to target their own elves with. And the fact that you give them Shroud and not Hexproof means that they can't target their own elves, which is sort of a, it's a thing that makes it not quite as bad as it would have been if it was Hexproof. Anyway, it works well now with Elvish Archdruid and other elf tribal cards because it's been errated to have the elf creature type, which is an advantage. And I think the card pairs really nicely with Ezuri, Renegade Leader. Ezuri's there to regenerate everybody but himself, and Eladamri's there to give Ezuri Shroud, so you have a pretty unstoppable elf army once you get those 2 guys out. And the card costs around 20 bucks, so you have to choose, do you want 5 booster packs from the most recent sets, or an Eladamri? The choice will be up to you. At number 8 on the list, another reserve list rare is Alurin. For 2 colorless and 2 green for a casting cost of 4 mana, it's an enchantment, and it reads, any player may play a creature card with total casting cost 3 or less, whenever he or she could play an instant, and without paying its mana cost. Holy shit. So everything gets flash, and everything, and your opponents get this too. Any creature cards convert a mana cost 3 or less, they can cast for free. So on top of just being awesome, and who doesn't like getting a Groundbreaker or a Gliss of the Trader or Leatherback Baloth for free? But it also works really well with cards like Recycle and Glimpse of Nature that allow you to draw a card whenever you play a card or whenever you cast a creature spell, because you can essentially just, cycle through your deck, play spells for free, draw cards, play more spells for free. So if playing a Groundbreaker, Gliss of the Trader, and Leatherback Baloth for free wasn't good enough already, why not draw 3 cards with it as well? Add in a Mana Severance or Trench Gorger to eliminate all the lands from your deck, and you could feasibly cast every single 3 mana or less creature in your deck, assuming you built your deck around the card Alurin. Add in a few cantrip creatures for good measure, like Wall of Blossoms, Elvish Visionary, Coiling Oracle, which allow you to draw a card when they come into play, and you can pretty much be guaranteed to cast your entire deck once Alurin comes out, as long as you have Recycle or Glimpse of Nature as well, and have played the Mana Severance card. Squadron Hawk, Sky Shroud Sentinel, and Imperial Recruiter are cards that find more copies of the same card, or Imperial Recruiter's case kinda does that. So with this sort of casual combo, I guess you could say, Sky Shroud Sentinel would draw you 4 cards and play you 4 creatures for free, which would be another way to sort of ensure that it works out. But casual combos aside, the most notable use of this card is with any creature that can return itself back to its hand when it's played. So Dreamstalker and Shrieking Drake would be 2 examples. If you play a Dreamstalker, it has the effect that when it comes into play, you have to return a permanent you control to its owner's hand. Bonus, it's not targeted, so your opponent has an even harder time of disrupting it. You play Dreamstalker, return it to your hand, play it again, return it to your hand because it's free, you just keep playing it forever. You get infinite enters the battlefield triggers and infinite cast triggers. So once that happens, you finish off your opponent with the storm spell of your choice. Grape Shot and Tendrils of Agony are always nice. Another combo you can use with this card is 2 Eternal Witnesses and an Ashnod's Altar. So play Eternal Witness, which returns a card from your graveyard to your hand. Ashnod's Altar allows you to sacrifice a creature to add 2 colorless mana to your mana pool. So you can sacrifice Eternal Witness for 2 mana, play the other Eternal Witness for free, returning the other one to your hand, and then sacrifice that one, 2 colorless mana, so you have 4, play another Eternal Witness, return it to your hand, sacrifice it, play, return, sacrifice, etc., etc. And now you have infinite mana, infinite enters battlefield triggers, infinite cast triggers, and infinite dies triggers. And did I say infinite mana? Yeah, it's just like so many things. It's totally overkill, but I thought it was kind of a funny combo to mention. And the sort of general gist of this card is that it is combo-erific. This card is born to be comboed with other stuff. And so that is definitely what makes this card awesome, and that is probably partially why it costs $23 for a single copy of this card. And at number 7 is Miri's Guile. So this card is a rare but not on the reserve list. It's 1 green mana for an enchantment, which reads, during your upkeep you may look at the top 3 cards of your library and put them back in any order. So, I mean, who doesn't like a Ponder every single turn? And in green too, which doesn't have effects like this quite as often. Of course you can't shuffle your library like Ponder, but with any fetch lands or other effects that allow you to shuffle your library, you can easily get this effect. Of course you don't draw a card like Ponder, but you do draw a card for your turn immediately after the effect, which is pretty sweet. And believe it or not, blue is not the only color that has cards that care about what's on top of your deck. There are also quite a few effects like that in green. A few notable ones are Call of the Wild, which is a 4-mana enchantment that you can pay for to put the top card of your library into play if it's a creature card, which can be absolutely devastating if you have big creatures in your deck. And Oracle of Muldaya, which allows you to play lands off the top of your deck and play an additional land each turn, so you can get some pretty wicked card advantage if you combine that with Miri's Guile. Another thing, Sensei's Dividing Top is banned in Legacy. Yeah, it's banned in Legacy, and so Miri's Guile could provide sort of a replacement for it. I'm not too familiar with the Legacy meta at the moment, or just in general, but I just thought that was something worth noting. So yeah, anyway, this card costs around $27.50, you know, approximately, give or take, and it has never been reprinted. As far as I know, there are no promos, there's no reprints, there's no... just never been reprinted ever. So buyer beware on this card. Obviously it's not reserve list, so it could be reprinted, and it might see a pretty significant price decrease if that happens. And at number 6 is Ancient Tomb. Another uncommon. My god, another uncommon this high on the list. Ancient Tomb is a land. It doesn't come into play tapped, and it taps for 2 colorless mana. Damn. Of course it deals 2 damage to you, so there's the disadvantage right there, but that is pretty not that big of a deal if you're playing a combo deck, you know, and you just want fast mana and get your combo out as quickly as possible. You don't care about the damage. Or if you're playing Commander, you know you have a lot of life. Life's not as important. You start with 40 instead of 20. As we all know from the examples of the Moxes and everything, having access to free extra mana, like mana tempo advantage that is repeatable, is an extremely strong effect. And for that reason, Ancient Tomb is a $30 card despite being an uncommon, although it has been bumped up to rare when it was reprinted in Ultimate Masters. And at number 5 on the list is Wasteland. Another uncommon. That's right, folks. There are 3 uncommons on the top 10 most expensive cards in Tempest. Uncommons, not on the reserve list, you know, relatively frequently printed in the set, but despite that, very expensive. So why is Wasteland such a good card? Well, it's a land, you can tap it for 1 colorless mana, or you can tap and sacrifice it to destroy target non-basic land. So it is strictly worse than Strip Mine, but also strictly less banned than Strip Mine in Legacy, and Strip Mine is also restricted in Vintage. And so Wasteland, being, in my opinion, the second best Strip Mine type option, is played a lot instead of Strip Mine. After all, you're going to need something to get rid of your opponent's Gaze Cradles, Dark Depths, and Tabernacle at Pendrell Vales, or other really annoying non-basic lands. It's also used in Commander despite Strip Mine not being banned, but of course in a 99 card deck, there's a good chance you might want to run more than one type of Strip Mine effect, and Wasteland being the second best type means that you might just want to run both. I know I do in one of my EDH decks. It's great to get rid of cards like Lotus Veil, which cause their controller to sacrifice 2 lands when they come into play. So that's a 3-for-1 if you can get rid of somebody's Lotus Veil with a Wasteland, or if they've put an enchantment on their non-basic land, it's a good way too because it's a 2-for-1. It also works well with Crucible of Worlds, Life from the Loam, and any other card that can basically bring it back from the graveyard and allow you to recast it. I shouldn't say cast because it's a land, but allow you to replay it a bunch of times. It can be absolutely devastating for an opponent and really, really annoying, especially in formats where people's land bases consist of a lot of non-basics. If you're continually playing Wasteland, sacrificing it and killing your land every single turn, that's extremely annoying. And add in something like an exploration or a way to play more than 1 land each turn, and you can kill 2 non-basics, and everybody at the table is going to hate you if you're playing EDH. So yeah, absolutely, really, really good card, really versatile, and can even be used for really powerful game-changing effects in the right circumstances. And so is worth $35, once again, despite being an uncommon. One thing to note too is this card did actually break the $100 range, so if you thought $35 was bad, just look back in the price charts at around 2014. This was around a $100 card and even broke above that for a short period, so I guess it's a testament to how powerful it is, but it has been reprinted a few times now, and so it's sort of been hovering around the $30 to $40 range, I believe, for the past couple years. At number 4, another reserve list rare, a white enchantment. This is 2 colorless and 2 white for a total of 4 casting cost. And it has the effect that all creatures lose all abilities and become 1/1 creatures. So just neuter everything. This card is, I think, mainly a commander card. I don't think it sees any play in normal constructed formats, I don't believe. 60 card decks and whatnot, but it's extremely useful in Commander for getting rid of your opponent's, you know, indestructible, hexproof, shroud, protection from everything nonsense. And then they can all just shrivel away in one fell swoop. And of course it's great for any deck that just wants to stall out and doesn't care about killing their opponents with their own creatures. And one other thing to note too is that it does stop enter the battlefield triggers, so it will neutralize your opponent's annoying Conjurer's Closet plus Runescarred Demon combo, or whatever other Conjurer's Closet kind of shenanigans they're thinking up in their enters the battlefield trigger decks. And as such, Humility is a $38 card at the time that I filmed this video. I'm actually surprised that it's not more expensive given that it's such a popular commander card. but I guess it's not used in many other formats, so that explains that. And at number 3, another non-reserve list rare like Miri's Guile. Not on the reserve list, but still expensive. Scroll Rack is a 2-mana enchantment. Sorry, 2-mana artifact, 2 colorless mana, which has the effect that you can pay 1 and tap it to choose any number of cards in your hand and set those cards aside. Put an equal number of cards from the top of your library into your hand, and though that's not drawing, you're technically not drawing those cards, and I'll explain why that's relevant later. So let's say you had 6 cards in your hand, you put those 6 cards aside, you take 6 cards from the top of your deck, put them in your hands, and then you put the cards that were in your hand back on the top of your deck, and in any order too. So, I mean, right off the bat, any effect that allows you to replace your entire hand with a new hand is probably pretty good. And on top of that, you combine Scroll Rack with any shuffle effect, fetch lands, make an easy target, or literally any other shuffle effect. It doesn't really matter. And you have a repeatable discard, or I shouldn't say discard, get rid of your hand and get a new hand, right? So you theoretically get a new hand every single turn with Scroll Rack, which is incredibly good. And also works well with miracles, especially if you have miracles in your opening hand. You can just Scroll Rack them back on the top of your deck and then draw them next turn, which is really sweet. It also works very, very well with a card called Land Tax. As if Land Tax wasn't broken enough as it is, it's a 1-mana enchantment originally printed in Legends, which reads, during your upkeep, if an opponent controls more land than you, you may search your library and remove up to 3 basic lands and put them into your hand. Sorry, it's that old wording. I don't know why they say remove up to 3 basic lands. Now they would just say search your library for 3 basic lands. But anyway, I digress. And then shuffle your library. So, in the right circumstances, you can get 3 basic lands every single turn from Land Tax, as long as at least one opponent has more lands than you. And with Scroll Rack, you can, and shuffle effects, you can get rid of your hand, shuffle those away, and replace them with new cards, essentially turning Land Tax into an ancestral land recall sort of thing, where you get 3 cards every single turn, which is absolutely insane. And one other interesting thing too that I actually read about online, and I had no idea about this card before, was that you can use it to prevent a mill death. So like if somebody mills out your entire deck, you know, you have no cards left in your library, and then you can actually save yourself with Scroll Rack, because, and that's like what I was talking about earlier, how you're not technically drawing the cards from your deck. So as long as you have 1 card in your hand, what you can do is on your upkeep, activate Scroll Rack, put that 1 card aside, you're not drawing them, you're taking them so you don't lose the game. You try to take, say, 1 card from the top of your deck, doesn't exist, so you just can't take it, you failed to take it or whatever. And then the card that you did have in your hand goes on top of your deck, and then you draw that card for turn. So as long as you have at least 1 card in hand, your opponent doesn't have any discard effects or an artifact removal or any ways to force you to draw, then you can essentially stall out the game after having your whole entire library milled, which is sort of a useful just-in-case effect to have attached to this card. And that's, you know, yeah, it's a $45 card. Wow, that's pretty expensive. Getting into the expensive range here. Nice. And at number 2 on the list, another reserve list rare, Earthcraft, and a green enchantment. Who would have thought? 1 colorless and 1 green, so 2 converted mana cost. Has the simple effect that you can tap an untapped creature you control to untap target basic land. Okay, so the key here is that you can use those creatures to untap one of your opponent's basic lands. I'm just kidding. That's ridiculous. You can use basically any of your creatures as some type of Llanowar elves, Arbor elf sort of thing. You know, pretend that they're those mana dorks basically, because they can untap one of your basic lands as soon as they come into play as well, which, you know, haste, that's why I put haste in quotes there. So all of your creatures become like some type of 1 mana elf, and they can be used right away because the tap effect is from the enchantment and not from the creature itself, so it ignores Summoning Sickness, which is just awesome to begin with on a 2 mana enchantment. And like Allurin, of course, works well with cards like Recycle, Mentor of the Meek, that allow you to get card advantage by playing cards, because you get, in some senses, like an optional 1 mana rebate by playing a creature, right? You can get 1 mana back by playing it. So on top of just being a generally strong effect, it's extremely, extremely combo-horrific. A card called Squirrel Nest, which was printed 4 years later in the set Odyssey, it's an enchantment which you can enchant on a land and allows that land to tap and put a 1/1 squirrel creature token into play. So what you can do with Earthcraft out is tap your land, create a squirrel, tap the squirrel to untap the land, tap the land to create another squirrel, tap the scroll to untap the land. I think you get the point. So, an easily feasible turn 3 infinite combo with only 2 cards, which is absolutely insane. And of course you could, on the next turn, overwhelm your opponent with a million fluffy squirrels, which would be an awesome way to kill somebody. I wish I could say that I had the pleasure of doing that, but unfortunately I have not had that grace yet. Spawning Grounds is another card with a very similar effect, which could be used in an EDH deck that wants to combo with Earthcraft. So it's an 8 mana version basically that creates 5/5 green beast creature tokens with trample instead of squirrels. So I mean, but if you're going to have infinite tokens, it doesn't really make a difference if they're 5/5s or 1/1s, so it's just another way to combo off with Earthcraft, which is nice. A few other combos that you could use, maybe in an EDH deck where you're trying to have as many things combo with Earthcraft as possible, would be any of the green enchantments that make your lands tap for an additional mana of any color, such as Fertile Ground, Utopia Sprawl, Verdant Haven, Trace of Abundance, and combo that with Ant Queen or Sacred Mesa, which allow you to put tokens into play for 2 mana. So of course you put a token into play, your land taps for 2, it's tapped, you tap the token, untap your land, tap it for 2 again, infinite tokens, done, easy. Green also has a few enchantments that allow your lands to tap for 2 extra mana, so you could also use those to combo with any of the many more cards that allow you to create tokens for 3 mana instead of 2, such as Ren's Run Packmaster, Jade Mage, and how do you pronounce that? Nemata, I think, Grove Guardian, just to name a few. So sweet EDH decks to be built based on this card. Oh, and choose your choice of animate land effects. Fastwood Zendikon, Earthen Arms, and Waker of the Wilds are some examples, and then attach any enchantment that allows it to tap to create a token, and you got infinite tokens. Basically, the options with this card are absolutely endless, and I'm only naming a fraction of the possible combos that are available on top of the really obvious Squirrel Nest combo. And so I think that really justifies the $60 price tag on this card. So that's right, folks, you can choose between either buying this card or buying 15 booster packs from a recent set. 15 booster packs, Earthcraft. Or if you want a playset of Earthcraft for your deck, you can buy what, like 2 booster boxes with that? So that's like 72 booster packs or a playset of Earthcrafts. Make your selection. And at number 1 on the list, another reserve list rare. The moment you've all been waiting for, this is Intuition. For 2 colorless and 1 blue, it's an instant which reads, search your library for any 3 cards and reveal them to target opponent. He or she chooses 1, put that card into your hand, and the rest into your graveyard. Shuffle your library afterwards. So the cards going to the graveyard is really, really awesome. I'll talk about that more in a second. Reminds me of Gifts Ungiven, except that, unfortunately, Gifts Ungiven is banned in Commander, and Intuition is not for some reason. I don't fully understand the logic behind that, as they're very similar cards, but nonetheless, awesome that we have access to Intuition, I guess. How much do you guess that the card will cost? So, before I tell you, I'm going to say a few more things about the card and why it's awesome. So, first of all, if you're not playing Highlander formats, you can literally just find 3 of the same card. Unlike Gifts Ungiven, which has to find cards with different names, you could literally just find 3 copies. Show them to your opponent, and they're like, well, shit. I guess you get it no matter what, right? So, great way to find your combos. You can almost treat it like a 3-mana Demonic Tutor in that sense, as long as you have 3 or 4 copies in your deck to find. Or if you are playing a Highlander format, and this is where the cards going into the graveyard effect is really awesome, rather than getting shuffled back into your library, you can literally find whatever your combo card is and 2 cards to bring it back from the graveyard. So no matter what your opponents pick, you're eventually going to get back, your combo piece. So you're going to get the card you want no matter what, which is really awesome. And it is possible also to pull this off in mono blue, although it's just not quite as efficient. You have to run cards like Codex Shredder and Recall if you want to pull that off. But another comparison that I want to make too is with Buried Alive. Buried Alive is a really powerful, in my opinion, it's a very strong card. It's 2 colorless, 1 black, so 3 converted mana cost sorcery to search your library for up to 3 creature cards and put them directly into your graveyard and then shuffle your library. So you're not obviously getting that card into your hand. But this is really, really good card for Reanimator decks. You know, you find 3 giant creatures and then you try and reanimate them after. or creatures with effects that happen from the graveyard, like Brawn or Filth. I guess Filth's not a great example, but cards like that. And yeah, it's considered a very strong card, but it doesn't give you any cards in your hand, and it can only find creature cards. I mean, I suppose Intuition wouldn't be quite as good for Reanimator decks because your opponent would probably pick the best one and put it into your hand, but you could easily just discard it after. And the fact that it doesn't have to pick creatures is really nice for a lot of other reasons outside of Commander decks. Outside of Reanimator decks, such as cards with flashback, right? You can find instants and sorceries with flashback. Just find Deep Analysis, Mystical Teachings, and Increasing Ambition if you're playing a blue-black Commander deck. And what is your opponent going to do? I mean, no matter what, you're going to get to cast all three of them eventually with massive card advantage benefits. So, overall, awesome. One more thing is Muldrotha of the Gravetide is becoming an extremely recently popular Commander General. It's a legendary creature, and it reads, during each of your turns you may play up to one permanent card of each permanent type from your graveyard. So basically you just find 3 permanents with Intuition, and you literally don't care which one your opponents pick, because you're going to get to cast all 3 no matter what, which is absolutely sweet. And this is shown too by the fact that on EDHREC.com, Muldrotha of the Gravetide has been in the top spot of the month. It is the #1 this month Commander with the most decks built around it, so you can see why players are probably wanting the card Intuition. Oh, and then even one more thing. There's just so many good things to say about this card. I can't really say enough. Target opponent chooses one, right? So you get to pick who's going to tell you which card that you get to keep. So this is very important in multiplayer games. You can pick the player who seems the least knowledgeable or maybe is not familiar with your deck to choose which card you get to keep, so they might make the wrong decision. You can use this with sort of like previous politics. Maybe you helped somebody else earlier and they owe you a favor, so you choose them as the person to give you your combo piece for Intuition or whatever else you need. And on top of that as well, if there's one player that's really, really scary and everybody's kind of like, whoa, we need to deal with this, then you can just choose one of the players that's not the scary player, and they're likely going to give you the removal spell that you need to get rid of that card. So that's another added benefit, and all these things together make Intuition a $65 card. So yeah, most expensive card in Tempest is Intuition at $65, or $260 for a playset. And don't even get me started on the cost of the Judge foil of this. Lastly, I just want to say one honorable mention before I end this video, which is Lotus Petal. This card is a common, but it's a really, really expensive common. It's a 0 mana artifact that can tap and sacrifice to add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool, so it's like 1/3 of a Black Lotus. Common, so obviously it's Pauper legal, Pauper Commander legal, which probably increases the demand a little bit. And it's $7.50. Oh my god. What the hell? For a common. This card actually was expensive enough to make it on my list of top 10 most expensive commons for the cheapest printing of each common. If you want, you can check that out. I'll put a link in the description to that video. So yeah, as you can see, there's a lot of really, really expensive commons and uncommons in Tempest. There were 3 uncommons on the top 10 most expensive list of the set, and there's this really expensive common, so it's no question why Tempest boxes are going for over $1,000 per box right now. Insane prices, but with the value inside of the set, it totally makes sense. And so yeah, do you guys have any speculations on which cards you think are going to go up in the future, which cards you think are going to go down in the future? Do you think there's any cards that I didn't include on this list that might appear on this list in the future? Maybe some undervalued cards, some cards that people haven't seen, some cards that are going up in the price sort of range. Let me know in the comments. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know if there's anything that I didn't say about these cards that is very notable and contributes to the reason why it's worth money. Anyway, I hope you learned something. Hopefully if you're out buying collections or whatever, you are now this much more informed about what to look out for, and if you had any of these cards in your own collection, now you know which ones are worth money. And that about wraps it up. Hope you enjoyed it. What the? Did it go backwards? Okay, sorry. Hope you enjoyed the video, and be sure to subscribe for future videos if you enjoyed. Take care, guys.